Oh, zing.
I'm going to double check to make sure we're not actually live. Just going to make sure of that.
I completely understand. I did set it to private, but please do check because
I'm gonna go make sure it isn't showing up anywhere.
Yeah. Go in like an incognito window. See what autofill does.
Yeah, please do this. Please do this for us. Matt,
we're recording right now, by the way, so you're not getting me to drop where I look at porn, you guys.
Fingers just automatically start moving to a certain website, youtube.com/channel/Maester-monthly. Hello and welcome to an evening at the Quill and Tankard with the hosts of the Maester Monthly podcast, which is, of course, your favorite pseudo-monthly podcast hosted by the moderators of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. I am one of your hosts, Michael, also known as Bookshelfstud.
And I'm another one of your hosts, Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I'm another one of your hosts, Matt, also known as JoeMagician.
Now, for those of you who were not necessarily around back in Season 7, we will do these little evenings at the Quill and Tankard as a recap of the latest episode of Game of Thrones. There is a lot of hashtag content out there about this latest season, possibly the most hashtag content that we've ever seen. So rather than just focusing on our own reactions, we're going to try and highlight some interesting content, maybe some underrated content from the subreddit /r/asoiaf. So we will be talking about some subreddit highlights and, of course, interspersing our own very spicy takes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Back here, it's the last season, everyone. Like, we did it. We are crossing the finish line at a mediocre pace. I was going to say very slowly, but we only have 6 episodes, so really not that slow.
You say that like The Long Night isn't going to be the greatest TV show of all time.
I mean, The Long Night I think will be interesting, but we are not there yet. We are at this night, which is I think going to be like a medium night, right? I don't know if it's going to be super long yet. We're going to find out.
That's true. Once we get Empire of Ash coming to... one of the biggest moments that came right near the end, which we're going to talk about at the beginning, was Ned Umber. Poor Ned Umber, who got nailed to a wall and set on fire after being reanimated. And there was a lot of speculation in the fandom about like what this symbol on the wall means, the flaming wheel of body parts on the wall with Ned Umber in the middle. One commenter on the subreddit, the night of the premiere, I'm pretty sure, in the discussion thread, the live episode discussion thread, AceBean27 said that they think it's referring to the way the Night King was first made, being strapped to a tree in the middle of a pattern of rocks like that. And that AceBean27, a luminary of the fandom, believes that the Night King's out for revenge, which is why he put a child in the middle of the pattern instead of an adult. That this similar thing was in the very first episode with the White Walkers leaving a child's corpse nailed to a tree and a pattern nearby. If you remember the spooky ghost girl from the first episode. The very first scenes.
Spoopy.
Very spoopy. Yeah. Very spoopy. What are you guys' feelings on AceBean's very astute take? I'm just impressed that they typed that like the night of. They're putting some thought into that shit.
Hang on, let me crack the knuckles on this one.
Oh God.
That was actually a good noise. Wow. That worked really well. You guys get to hear me crack my knuckles.
Are you okay?
Wait, let me try it with my elbow. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, no,
our Foley artist is right off camera snapping celery sticks to get the effect.
Yeah. I guess a little bit more seriously than me cracking my joints for all of your pleasure. There has been quite a lot of speculation. It seems like everybody's kind of trying to answer the question that Derek actually posed, because in the past when these things have showed up, it was just kind of like, oh, kind of, what's that? Nobody really knew. This is the first time they had a character go like, oh, this means something. Kind of like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Time. Fourth kind? Close Encounters of the fourth, whatever it was.
Third kind.
However many kinds there were in that movie. this has been a popular interpretation that it's like his signature kind of thing, or he's talking about his own creation. I had a slightly different take on this. I put it into a YouTube video where I sort of thought that what he's doing is like a desecration of a symbol, that it kind of reminded me of what the Freys did to Robb Stark, where they lopped his head off and put Grey Wind's head on top of it to be like, hey, it's the direwolf. It's like he's making it in the grossest way possible kind of thing. And it's sort of like a warning thing. The Ned Umber part with the child in between in it made a lot of sense too, that it was sort of, but the initial ones were interesting because they were all outside. This is the first one they've put inside, and it was on a wall. So I was kind of thinking that maybe like they changed the message from what they were before because he's now killed all the children, and now it's maybe for the humans of Bran to see, where he'd previously exterminated his enemies with the other one.
Well, yeah, now the Night King is putting it up in an art gallery. You know, they have leveled up than like just putting all their graffiti out on the streets.
Yeah, he's definitely the Banksy of the lands beyond the wall, you know, and he's now in the MoMA equivalent at Last Hearth. Yeah, it holds up.
Yeah, and as I was discussing with Ian Thomas Malone on Twitter, you know, instead of shredding the artwork, now they're just setting it on fire. That is the art of it. You know, it's and plus it's circular. It's like a mandala, right? Just ephemeral. It was meant to be destroyed. You were meant to attack the small child, but actually probably not. I don't know. It was actually really, really sad.
I mean, like, he probably didn't know Beric was coming, so they probably would assume that the little kid would just stay there screaming forever. Maybe that's worse.
That's an awful thing to say. No,
that's kind of where my mind goes.
Maybe. I think it's also interesting if you look at it in the larger context of the themes of the story, right? Because in book 1, Ned is all about like, we are not going. Oh my god, I just hit my mic, everyone. Sorry. Ned Stark is all about like, we're not going to kill children. And the fact is, this episode starts with a small child heralding again that idea of innocence that we had in the very first episode of Game of Thrones. And like that, just like the small creepy child girl from the first episode, we have it being Ned Umber. Like, it shows you that the White Walkers are definitely, hey, they're bad guys, they're killing kids, and they're just leaving them to be like zombies in this performance art piece for like forever.
Yeah, that's a good connection to the beginning of the episode with the young guy running around, because they're definitely both meant to remind us, I think, of the Starks. I mean, it's Ned Umber. They conspicuously name him Ned, much like Talissa's baby at the Red Wedding. There's another post from user Gnormez, which was they posted this a comparison of some symbols that the White Walkers have made with some house sigils. A lot of people have pointed out that the spiral with Ned Umber looks like the Targaryen sigil in the show, the sort of circle of the three-headed dragon. Gnormez points out that the symbol from the original pilot episode, the bisected circle that extends beyond the circle, looks a lot like House Dane's sigil from the show canon, with a sword sort of going through a circle that's the path of the comet. So, I mean, I don't know, this idea that maybe the White Walkers are almost just like parodying, to maybe, Matt, to what you were saying, like taking these sigils and disrespecting them or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's super interesting that they've noticeably made it so they can't talk. The only way they can is that weird scraw thing where they scream. So this is like the only forms of communication we really get from them. It's like what he does when he walks around and flexes at Jon, and these weird performance art pieces. So it's an odd way to add depth to characters, but it's interesting at least. And also there were so many spicy memes about the spiral thing. The shrimp, that was a good one. I think I saw,
my god, that was like one of the best, I'm not gonna lie.
Was there like a blooming onion or something? That one was...
Oh, I didn't see that one, but I would totally have shared that one if it existed. There are many memes that people bring up throughout this episode.
That's really good, actually. I like the blooming onion one a lot. Blooming umber, yeah.
I mean,
no.
it's not an exact corollary for the spiral, but I'm going to bring up this very downvoted comment by user Idioteca, which I think is amazing. And it says, hell yeah, Night King is Uchiha Madara, which Jelly Bronut, insert numbers here, on Twitter also brought up because there's a character in Naruto that has a spiraling mask. And I'm not saying it's not that. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's not that. Matt is giving me disapproving glances.
Are you about
now,
to
everyone?
spoil who the mask character is? Is that what you're doing right
Oh,
now?
is that what I did? I'm so sorry.
No.
We can.
No, I'm kidding. You didn't do it. You're talking about Toby, right?
Yeah. Jelly
Okay.
Bronut shared a picture of Toby and was talking about the Night King and the spiral, and I'm not, again, gonna say that it's not that.
I mean, if this is the Naruto Game of Thrones crossover we've all been hoping for, I hope this is how it's revealed.
I mean, we're going to get to it later about all the different, I think, power-ups, but in many ways, does Game of Thrones kind of feel like maybe it is a shonen manga / anime at the moment?
Oh, I'm so happy about that. One thing about the symbols that are going around was for my video, I went back and listened to what Dan and Dave had to say about each of them. And this first one, the one with the circle with the line through it, they said didn't mean anything. They had cut the Waymar Royce duel. So they needed a way to show that the White Walkers had intelligence. So they picked a random symbol and made that of body parts. But the later ones, the spirals that they've been making after the cave episode, they specifically have been calling it out that they're talking about like things like the golden ratio and the idea of spirals in nature, that it's supposed to be a sacred Children of the Forest symbol. Not really sure what the first one is, though. They didn't really answer that.
I think it makes sense considering how much we see circular symbolism come up in like ideas of the supernatural, as you were saying. You see it in like Stonehenge, you see it in crop circles, which turns out are made by people, but it does evoke that feeling of like, oh shit, there's like a higher intelligence out there. I will say that the use of the children, as we were talking about earlier, kind of still, I think, heralds back to some of those horror movie tropes of like, oh, the cursed child thing, but not Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I like actually still haven't read, but
I don't bother. It's
same.
Yeah, not worth it, I would say. It is the wit and wisdom of Tyrion Lannister of the Harry Potter canon.
So it's canon.
Oh yes!
Wow, you just admitted that on this cast. You admitted the Cursed Child is part of the Harry Potter canon.
Bold move.
All the Harry Potter stands are coming for me now.
Everyone head down to the Pitchfork Emporium for Michael.
That's right. Oh, but we'll get to specialized pitchforks later when we talk about Arya's.
Is that what that was?
I have no idea. In fact, let's just jump to that.
Jump into it.
Because why not?
Waymar Royce.
Why not? Now, I will note that this next post that we're going to talk about is actually spoilers production, because it includes some information from production materials. It's not really any spoilers. Just if anyone's trying to be a purist about avoiding interviews with Tommy Dunn, the show's blacksmith, then this is your warning. But no, this was a post titled Arya's New Weapon, which is not a pitchfork, but could be. The post was made appropriately enough by user AryaStarkBaratheon, and it's just a nice little breakdown of the blueprint that Arya hands Gendry in this episode for a new toy for her fighting purposes. And I mean, you can barely see it on screen. The blueprint, it's almost impossible to see. But from a little bit of investigation, a little bit of digging, Weapons Master Tommy Dunn did say in an interview, he said that it is phenomenal, this weapon. It's going to be a showstopper, he said. It was great to finish, great to make, great to design it, and that it was designed to be reverse engineered and made into 2 different items. And so the post breaks down, it looks like it's this sort of a bow staff spear with an obsidian spearhead at one end and like a bludgeoning end at the other or something. Anyway, yeah, Arya's getting her sort of, very rare weapon now that she's entering sort of the higher level classes. I think she multi-classed a little bit. Took a few levels of assassin by joining the Faceless Men, and now has access to, I don't know, more sneak attack damage. I'm really struggling on this one.
I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I didn't catch what it was, and I kind of thought it was an obsidian gun. Like, somehow she just invented guns in Westeros. She was just going to shoot them at them.
You are not alone in thinking that.
Do you remember not episode, but the time in My Immortal, the Harry Potter fanfic, in which Voldemort hands Harry a gun? And it's like, you're going to use this. And I forgot the rest of what happens, but anyways.
Well, I assume like weird sex, because
100% relevant
with that
though.
gun.
Yeah, that's absolutely what happened. It is funny you say that though, because a lot of people in the comments, they took Tommy Dunn's comment in particular about it being like a game changer. They're like, oh, it has to be something more than just a double-sided spear. So someone did say it looks like a handheld dragon glass cannon, which, good lord.
I know what. Okay, I thought it was kind of the dragon cannon from Mulan that she shoots.
Oh, yeah, like just basically a firecracker. The catch is that, granted, we have drifted far away from God's Light, and by God's Light I mean the books, and George R. R. Martin has said that allegedly the materials for gunpowder don't exist in this world, which other people who I guess are more versed in chemistry have pushed back on. They're like, oh, you don't have this thing, but this thing is naturally occurring. And I'm just like, psh, whatever. It's a fantasy world. George said it doesn't. But it could work magically, I guess. Why not?
Yeah, right. I mean, if maybe Bran wargs into like a team of ants inside the weapon, and then all the ants throw something really hard, and that's, instead of gunpowder, they have like
I'll be honest, I was hoping you were going to go with he was going to warg the bullets and then fly them like ravens.
Exactly. Yeah, no, they're just going to, instead of bullets, what they're going to do is just sharpen the beaks of all the ravens in Winterfell, and then Bran is just going to fly them at like Mach 4 right at the enemy.
The Last Jedi strategy. Very bold.
But they would also have to outfit each one of those birds with like a small little beak of dragon glass. Think about it.
Absolutely.
Or they could like even like put like a small shard of Valyrian seal within each beak.
Like a sliver. Yeah.
Yes.
That's all it takes. Imagine if the Night King got assassinated by like Bran warging a raven and just flying at him like with a sonic boom.
Oh, I got it.
You will never walk, but you will fly.
I know how you make this work. You know the Mountains helmet that has a fist on top of it?
Oh my god.
Instead of a fist, you just put obsidian on there and you just have them go head first.
Well, don't they have the Kingsguard have very sharp helmets now in show canon? They have those fins on top, like shark fins. So that's all you need to do. You're right.
How do we only have rogue classes? Why don't we have any monk classes, is all I'm saying, who can have actual fists on their fists?
That's a great point. Imagine some like obsidian brass knuckles.
I think we're gonna get those. Like from the trailer, they attached it to like literally everything.
That's true.
Like even on their shoulder pads, like they were World of Warcraft characters or something.
Oh, that would be so dope. Yeah. Oh man, I hope that Jon gets like a suit of dragon glass armor. That's what I'm rooting for.
Oh man,
it would be dumb as hell because he would just. I mean, what was he gonna do? Just like tackle the army of the dead?
Push him over at them.
He's gonna hug them. He's gonna just bring him in for a hug, and then they just melt in his arms. Oh. And what does that say about love?
Do you think that's why they foreshadowed all the hugging in this episode? He did so much hugging.
He's gonna hug the White Walkers with the dragon glass suit and be like, "Oh, you're so wet," as they just. I have no regrets in my life.
Oh, you're so wet," said Jon to the Night King.
That's his classic line when he gets into the cave.
I have no regrets in life.
That's amazing. Good Lord. Well, what if they say take more seriously, balls of dragon glass, and then Dany has the dragons drop them.
The balls drop
Dropping them balls.
Was this supposed to be more serious somehow, Michael?
It somehow was.
Wait. Don't the dragons? Didn't we recently learn that their poop is hot? Maybe it's obsidian.
It is a theory on the subreddit. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but it was posted several years ago.
It was posted by the others take ya underscores in between the and others and take ya spelled YA. And yeah, their theory was that the poop of dragons is dragon glass, and this is an earnest theory. I also really like the others take ya. They're a very nice user.
Yes.
I just like the idea of her just like giving them a lot of food, then flying over and just having the dragons poop on the White Walkers. That'd be pretty great.
So for the record, this post was made August 13th, 2013, so almost 6 years ago, titled My Theory for What the Mysterious Glass Substance Is, in parentheses, long, by the others take ya. And yes, the theory was that obsidian is dragon poop. So, yeah, sort of an aerial bombardment is what we're getting at here.
Yeah, maybe they're into it.
Okay, but what do you think about it being the House Dane sigil? If I'm gonna just be serious for 2 seconds.
The symbol from the pilot, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, are we going back to that?
Oh, we could not.
Sure. No, yeah.
We keep talking about making the Night King wet. Whatever you want.
I don't know if it's gonna be the House Dane sigil because they made a decision so early on to basically curb stomp the Danes out of the story. So I doubt that's what they were going for. I really think they just sort of asked the production staff on site that day to draw something with the body parts they had laying around, and those guys just picked something at random based on their comments. I don't think it's really supposed to mean anything.
I'm gonna be real. Amidst all the other like small talk, I kind of forgot we were talking about Arya's weapon, and that's the post we were on. It's a cool weapon. It reminds me of like the weapons in Bloodborne and like all the other cool video game stuff. I do wonder how it plays into other theories. Like she already has a dragonglass dagger, or not dragonglass dagger, a Valyrian steel dagger, and people discussing how she's going to acquire Dark Sister. Where do you think this all fits into that book theory? If I'm going to ask again a serious question, that's actually on the post we're discussing.
Relating to Dark Sister, that's an interesting question, because in the show she spent so much time in season 5 and 6 training with a staff, so it makes sense that she's like trying to build herself a staff. In the books, if she's more of a sword person and could end up with Dark Sister, maybe this is the way of giving her like the equivalent of that, like her sort of primary one-handed martial weapon that it fits with what she's been taught. There's not really room for them to bring in some random Valyrian steel sword right now in the show like Dark Sister, but they've also conflated dragon glass and Valyrian steel a lot in terms of what they can do, I think. So
true. She also commented when John held up Longclaw that it was too big for her, so that might be like we're not giving her a Valyrian steel sword kind of thing. I don't really know why that comment was in there otherwise. It seemed a little odd based on context.
It was a dumbass scene as well.
Actually, once I saw that it was a spear, I think it was Joanna Robinson that posted this on Vanity Fair, and I think I saw it on Twitter. That my mind instantly went to like Simeon Star Eyes. That maybe that's what they were inspired by with this choice.
Sure, yeah.
I like that.
There's a commenter, I like Bubbles 11 in the thread, who says, Simeon Star Eyes is said to have a double-bladed staff, even drops the quote, which is from a Game of Thrones, which is kind of, Simeon Star Eyes, doesn't come up that often in conversation, but is one of those legends that's there from the very beginning. So if we're talking about a character with like a staff with blades at both ends that can chop 2 men at once and, all that kind of cool stuff, yeah, maybe it's a more integral part of the story than we would think. I don't know. I'd be curious to know who like asked for this. Was it Maisie Williams being like, I need something cool? Was it the writers being like, she trained with a staff? It would make sense for her to have this, where the idea came from.
Especially because I don't think I've ever seen a weapon like this before. Like a a spear on one side and then like some sort of heavy weight on the other side that splits in half. I don't even know what to call that. Is that a real thing?
There's a user who seems to suggest that it reminds them the bell at the non-dragon glass tipped end, according to user Flailing Octane, looks to them like a gunpowder bell on a, as you were saying, Matt, I can't say this, Hailong Zhang hand cannon.
Oh. Just share the Mulan cannon. It's cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's a thing and people like keep it on the other end. I don't know.
This just seems so obscure that I wonder if this is literally just a Simian Star Eyes reference. I don't see otherwise you're going for this.
I like the Simian Star Eyes idea. Especially because there was a portion of time, right? And especially because Arya was learning to use the staff during the time Simian Star Eyes was allegedly blind, and this Arya learned to use the staff when she was blind. Oh, look at that.
Actually, that's pretty good. That might make sense. I think that's probably correct.
That's a great point. Yeah,
we did it.
Way to go, Eliana.
Sealed, locked it up. Yeah, that's perfect.
And then who's the Hellhounds?
What the fuck?
Simian Star Eyes saw Hellhounds at the Night Fort. That was his big thing.
Mm-hmm. Could it just be like because apparently Sandor Clegane's not going to talk to Sansa and it's not part of her storyline at all? Is it just this hound?
Yes.
The hound?
That's it.
Maybe she sees Clegane Bowl. Nailed it.
It could be that. It could still be Nymeria, and like that Wolfpack, she did encounter Nymeria again, and while she was like, that's not you, and I guess we decided we are not going to do those wolves again because we can't fit it into the CGI budget. George R. R. Martin has talked about how Nymeria and her Wolfpack, you don't hang a Wolfpack on the wall if you're not going to use it. George doesn't have that.
Was an amazing amazing George impression.
Thank you. I think it really, really captured him and his like New Jersey heritage. And by that I mean not at all.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I thought George joined the call for a second there. I was in.
You were in. Yeah. Yeah, the Hellhounds. That's an open one. I like the Cleganes. Do you think we'll see Nymeria again this season?
I seriously wait. Oh, did I think I muted myself. Oh wait, no, I'm good.
No, you're talking.
Okay. Okay, good. It was flashing on me. It was weird. My sincere hope is that the Chekhov's Wolfpack is going to be fired at the Golden Company as Cersei comes to betray the Starks.
Oh.
You don't have to do, if it's in the woods, you don't have to do a ton of CGI, and you can just make it chaotic so it's not too bad. And it'd be a nice way for, like, obviously the Starks know that Cersei's going to betray them. It'd be nice if they had some sort of plan, and this would be a nice way to bring that back, because they're going to have to go through the Riverlands.
I mean, it'd be better if it were like wolves against elephants, but whatever.
Oh.
Hashtag little pussy.
Okay. That's the name of Harry Strickland's favorite elephant from the book. Just to clarify for, all those people who forgot the name of Harry Strickland's favorite elephant from the books somehow.
This is a hell of a cast we're doing so far.
Oh, man.
It might not be. I was looking it up again. I was like, were we all wrong?
What?
I was looking it up too. Apparently it's in a sample chapter from The Winds of Winter.
Are we
but
wrong?
I can't find it.
Are we wrong, Matt?
I don't know. I couldn't find it in a search of Ice and Fire, but it doesn't mean it's incorrect.
I mean, so people were asking Jeff, like, are you just like reading?
Is this like a collective thing where we all thought his elephant was named Little Pussy and none of us were right?
Allegedly, so according to a wiki of Ice and Fire, Little Pussy is a member of the Golden Company. He has a lucky cat. But I refuse to believe that. I like to believe that Little Pussy is the name of the elephant.
I know he was an elephant. Yeah. It
was apparently an Arya chapter. It was after they landed and Harry Strickland was all upset about it.
Yeah, it was like in the Arya too. And it was mentioned for like a minute. Like once.
Just out of curiosity, have there been different versions of Arya 2 released? Like maybe he put it in, everyone laughed at him and he took it out?
I don't know. Like I don't know if they're different versions, but he did read it aloud once, and he like also put it up on his site. I don't know how different or similar they are.
True, I guess. Yeah.
I haven't ever done that legwork. Jen Snow might have.
Oh. Somebody ring the Jen Snow gong. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
She'll be
you're
coming
welcome.
along shortly.
That's right.
She's
We've
not.
summoned her. Wow, this is a real bummer, you guys. I thought Little Pussy was
I
an
know.
elephant.
I've been out here saying little pussy all the fucking time, but whatever.
I mean, but you
We
can
live
say
with
that
our-
normally. That's just like a thing you say.
It's really not, but we all live with our mistakes, and that's how life works.
You want the big girl.
Oh my god! All right,
You want the big elephant, but you get the...
I want it on the record that Matt just laughed so hard his camera accidentally muted itself for a second.
That joke was so good, technology failed.
All right, our next post, Eliana, you were saying.
Yeah, so our next post is actually we're going to double back. We're going to talk about Bran.
Oh.
And Bran in this post by user Boogeyman, and instead of O's, the O's are zeros, so it's B00G-Man.
That's
Thank
so
you.
elite.
Which is entitled Waiting for an Old Friend. Bran's old friend line might reference a thing that old Nan had said once about old stories being like old friends. Boogeyman cites the time that Mira and Jojen were talking about the Night of the Laughing Tree, and old Nan had taught Bran that old stories are like old friends. She used to say, you have to visit them from time to time, and that could be what Bran is referring to when he says that he's waiting for an old friend. And Boogeyman says, I think Bran has been the source of most of the tale from long ago, and they are based upon the stories of the here and now. I think this is just another clue toward the big reveal.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, this post, which only received a paltry 2 upvotes, which is a real shame. I was like, oh, this is a nice catch. This is cool. Oh,
it has 0 upvotes
time
on my
travel.
end.
Oh, really?
I just gave it one, so
I'm giving it one too. Boop.
not abuse.
That's right. They link to this very, very long blog post called "Time Travel Hurts My Head," which is theorizing about like time being a circle and Bran being the source for, I guess, every legend. And like seeding them back. And so their theory was that, this line in the episode where he says, I'm waiting for an old friend, is actually a reference to this, to him traveling through time because he's waiting for an old story, which is like an old friend because he knows them all, because he made them all. The top comment by user Jose DGO is he was waiting for Jamie.
Yeah, that's
so
it's like super hype slayer, just like pretty sure he was waiting for Jamie.
I thought that the implication, maybe I like read this wrong between the OP and the first comment, was that in Bran waiting for Land the Clever, that Jamie was fitting into the story of Land the Clever. Did I read that and interpret that wrong?
I'm trying to process
take
what you
it.
just said.
So people have discussed previously, right, how so many of the characters right now in Game of Thrones and / Song of Ice and Fire have been fulfilling the same sort of storylines as from the time of like the heroes, the Age of Heroes, and oftentimes Tyrion is one who is coded as Land the Clever, but I thought that because Jaime Lannister is also a Lannister and therefore of the same line as Land the Clever, what Bran was talking about is he saw, Land the Clever like usurped in some ways the family line, just as Jaime did with the Baratheons, and I thought that it was like that's what they were talking about.
So much more like a Wheel of Time kind of thing, where it's like reincarnations.
Apparently, that is exactly what Boogeyman has been theorizing, that Game of Thrones' ending is very much inspired by Wheel of Time.
Yeah, that whole reincarnation thing. Yeah, I hadn't made the Land the Clever connection, but that's, I don't know. I've never thought about Jaime as a land figure, but yeah, usurping the line is definitely a big part of that story. And it would be interesting to, I don't know, to have Bran be our connective tissue there. Don't necessarily think that Bran is going to be the source for all stories, at least not in the show, I think maybe. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a fun way to tie in this book line and the idea that Bran knows things. He was definitely waiting for Jaime, though. He was doing a prank on Jaime.
Doing a little gag where he gives him the stare, like, hey.
Doing a gag where he waits for like 12 hours because he doesn't actually know exactly when Jaime's showing up, and he's just been like trying to be ready.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the greatest prank ever. Actually, there was one thing about the idea that he's waiting for Jaime that kind of got my brain going, and I wanted to know what you guys thought about this. So we know from last season that Bran was watching Arya at the crossroads, and he's also been watching some other stuff live throughout the world. But the idea that he's been watching Jaime since he left King's Landing, do you think that means he's like doing a mass surveillance thing? Or is there some reason that he decided Jaime Lannister was worth following all the way from King's Landing to Winterfell?
Has he been following Jaime since he left King's Landing? But also, I mean...
Well, he knows he's arriving, so he has to know he's been traveling. And nobody knows Jaime's doing that.
I think that Bran is, as he said to Jon, not quite a man grown. He's a teenager and will therefore put a lot of effort into his pranks and his trolling.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Bran is definitely now the right age to like swat somebody or like order a bunch of pizzas to someone's house. And is doing the equivalent of that with his magic powers. I mean, it's also possible that like he just, I don't know, checked in on Jaime somehow on the way and was like, oh, Jaime's passing River Run right now. That means he should be in Winterfell in about a week or whatever. And wasn't necessarily constantly watching, but like had seen him a couple times and like triangulated his course or something.
I guess, I mean, like, why did he think that Jaime was worth even checking in on? There must be other things on his mind. There was also the explanation that Isaac Hampstead gave about his powers last season, where he was asked about does he think Bran knew what the dagger was for? And he answered that he sort of thought that Bran could not see the future exactly, but he could see like things of intense destiny. Like they sort of like the ripples in the dreamscape idea that you had, Michael. So I'm wondering if this indicates that Jaime has a much bigger role this season than people think if Bran's paying attention when he has so much to pay attention to.
Interesting. Yeah, this idea. First off, I had not heard that, so I feel a little vindicated in my ripples in the dreamscape thing. But also, yeah, that's the idea that Jaime is like significant, important. That he'll play some big role. Maybe see it's hard because like even thanks for sending nipples in the dreamscape in the chat, Eliana. super appreciate that.
She's
I was
dying
actually
laughing.
trying not to throw everything off. That's why I was in the chat.
Oh, it was worth throwing everything off. Nipples in the dreamscape. The porn parody of my Reddit post. No, but yeah, I mean, we know Jaime has to do something important, like as an audience, like on the meta level. So it's interesting, this idea that Bran in universe has a reason to believe that Jaime has important things to do.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you totally understand why he'd be checking on his siblings. This is a really odd one to me. Like, I have no sense that he's like checking up on Bronn or if he's looking around at what Qyburn's doing. This seems to be, and he knew it was coming for a while because we've been joking that he's waiting outside for a while, but yeah, he was waiting for Jaime. Why is he doing that?
I think something that holds me back a little. I agree with all these things, but there's something that makes me feel hesitant about the idea that Bran is only there to maybe potentially absolve Jaime because of the role that he might play later on, because then it injects this sense of fatalism into everything as opposed to this sense of morality of like, does Jaime deserve to live or like deserve absolution after everything he's did solely because of what his destiny will be, as opposed to has the things that he's done yet, has the way that he's changed as a character warrant that sort of forgiveness or not? Or does it mean that Bran himself, right, regardless of what Jaime's going to do later, does it mean that Bran will find it in himself to forgive Jaime? Though I guess we've seen a lot of Bran right now being beyond or not beyond those sorts of ideas.
That's true. That's a really good point. I'm not even sure he wants to forgive Jaime on like even a personal level, because he seems to be kind of stepping into a Varys or Littlefinger role. Like, he waited until Sam heard the news about Randall Tarley and then just sort of sent him as at Jon, like almost like a weird kind of pointed message. Like, he wanted to make sure the message was delivered that Dany's a bad person, but then also that he's Aegon Targaryen, almost like to create conflict there, because he could have told Jon the whole time. For some reason, he was waiting. And it's this weird intentionality behind his moves at this point that are just kind of puzzling me, to be honest.
Yeah, and I hope we get to spend a little bit more time finding out what's up with Bran, and I don't know. I feel like he needs to have a conversation with someone at some point that's not about a plot thing, but is about Bran, because we don't really understand if he's how cold he's being, I guess, about these things. Like, is he purely utilitarian about this kind of stuff, or is he, like, I guess to kind of with the Jaime thing, was he waiting in the courtyard because he needed to be there so he can tell Jaime X thing so Jaime fulfills his destiny? Or was he waiting in the courtyard because he was like, bitch, I need to stare you down. I need to look in the eyes of the man who threw me from this tower. Like, is it an emotional thing for Bran, or is it more of a master plan, a strategy? I feel like we don't know the answer.
Because I think that either way, like, regardless of how utilitarian Bran seems to have become, I think it would be really difficult for someone to say, like, yes, I accept that you threw me off this tower because it had to be this way for me to have gained this third eye and gained all of these powers. And I think that this is a very human and character struggle that I would like to see in Bran. I'm not sure if we will get it. And I think that him just being like, yeah, Jaime, you get to survive because you're going to play this role, I think doesn't really address that very intense conflict between, like, does he accept himself what he is? And maybe he does, like, based on the way that he's been acting and telling Jon, like, yeah, I'm almost a man, etc. So
I was thinking back actually to the scene between Bran and Mira, and a lot of people wrote that scene off to saying like, oh, this means Bran's a robot now. But I wonder if maybe that also means that Bran still has some hint of emotion in him, because sending Mira away is cruel, but also sent her to the neck, far away from Winterfell, and he knew the White Walkers were coming. So that might have been a move to save her. So if he's still doing things emotionally, then you're right. It may come up that he has to balance, like, the classic conundrum in A Song of Ice and Fire of duty and the things you care about.
yeah, you can feel more than one thing at once, right? And I think that bringing up the mirror idea is a really great point, because, yeah, on one hand, this has bequeathed him with great power. On the other hand, he wanted to be a knight.
It sounds like that we are talking about the Bran and the Mira. You know what I'm...
Keep going.
I do.
You take it?
I don't actually know the rest of the words of the song to spoof it.
About the Bran and the Mira.
Do you know any other words?
Asking.
Yeah. That's how it goes. Yeah. After that, more stuff. I'm asking them to change way.
Wait, it wouldn't be I'm asking her to, like, go to the
go away.
Yeah, nailed
it. No message could have been any clearer than what Bran told her then. Yeah.
Wow, we got a
Apparently
lot from this
it was not very clear, though.
Yeah. We no, it was not.
I don't think he's going to be clear again for the rest of the season. I think he's just going to be like this. Maybe the only person who will probably be straight with is maybe Arya or maybe Jon.
See, I really feel like we could have used, whether last season or this season, just a scene of Arya and Bran and Sansa just, like, chatting, like, sitting down and, like, I don't know, getting into it a little bit. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of room for siblings to have like interesting, honest conversations with each other. That's a relationship I think the audience can kind of understand and get into a little bit.
I will say, is because you brought this idea up, and because I had recently reread this chapter between Sam and John, I was surprised that when Bran said that he is not John's brother, that he just put it on Sam. I thought he was going to be like, you're John's brother. Granted, I guess technically John deserted the Night's Watch, but not really deserted because he was killed by it and whatever. I don't know where Sam exists in this entire system.
He's like marked for death twice, I think. Maybe 3 times. He's a thief. He deserted the Citadel and deserted the Night's Watch.
Well, he had sex with Gilly as a man of the Night's Watch.
But you're allowed to have sex. You're just not allowed to take wives or father children.
But then he pretended that little Sam was his. So as far as everyone's concerned, he did break that one.
But everyone knew that kid like already existed. They were like all there.
Oh, how many crimes did he commit?
Poor Sam. Yeah, we need Clint. We need Laws of Ice and Fire on this one stat.
This actually just made me realize something. Like, I think most of us have this idea in our head that Sam is like very like straight-laced and uptight and doesn't break any rules. And we're just going over all the many rules he has broken.
Sam like messed with the results of an election, so
he sure did.
Sam is this is a lot of Harry Potter for one episode, so maybe we should cap it after this. But he reminds me a lot of like the constant Gryffindor thing in the books of like, we're breaking the rules, but it's, you know, it's for a good cause. We did it for our friends or whatever. It's that whole thing. I don't know if that'll come back to bite Sam at any point. It seems like it won't, at least in the show, unless you count the karmic comeuppance of losing his brother, which seems a little fucked up.
I don't know. He did ask for a pardon.
Yeah, so. That's true. That's true. Which he's guaranteed to get now.
Oh, he got that pardon.
Danny feels super guilty. Yeah.
Oh, I gotta do right by my boyfriend's friends. I want him to think I'm cool and that I can hang.
That's right. Oh man. Yeah, Sam would definitely be the best man at John's wedding. So, this is an important relationship.
Do they have best men in Westeros?
Best men.
This is a goddamn zing from Eliana.
Best men or Besteros. Nope, not worth it. Not worth pursuing. Nope. Next post, Eros. This post received a total of 0 upvotes, as far as I can tell. This was posted by user CipherCx. The post is "A whole new world?" ? I feel like Game of Thrones, they say, has brought a whole new perspective to Aladdin's A Whole New World during the scene when Danny and John take a joyride on the dragons. Anyone else have that come to mind immediately when the scene started? Can we sound off in the comments if you had that come in your head immediately? I don't know, guys. What about you? Aladdin vibes?
No, but
yeah. No. I actually just kind of thought about when I saw this scene that, like, I don't know if I've ever seen good dragon riding. I think every time I've seen it in a movie or a TV show, it looks stupid. The people are just so much smaller and they always look ridiculous on the back of the thing.
Would you say, I would say it looks good in How to Train Your Dragon, which is an animated movie.
So
maybe it's the live action, like it's the, live action plus CGI thing.
Maybe something just about like live action dragon riding veers into the uncanny valley.
It could be. It just always like, I'm always like, this doesn't look right. Maybe it's the proportions are off or something like that. Like John just looked puny on the back of Rhaegal, and so does Danny every time.
Oh, I'm into
But that's
that.
actually how they look in the pencil illustrations on Fire and Blood. They're very small.
Yeah, I didn't really like those. They were like good quality, but I just sort of looked at them like, I think this was better in George's head.
I mean, I understand why, because for the dragons to be as formidable as they are, I think they have to be enormous compared to the small, fleshy humans, but...
Oh, I figured it out. I know why I don't like it. It's from the Hobbit movies, when like what's his name? When Bilbo's talking to Smaug, and I'm like, all of this is wrong. None of this works. He's like the size of his fingernail. None of this should be happening.
I hate to tell you this, but hobbits aren't real.
Shut your mouth.
Maybe they are. I don't know. I mean, people did talk about the Dany and Jon scene as being very kind of Disney romantic. Like it maybe felt like something that wasn't natural to Game of Thrones. Dare I say it? The sort of swooping around and the like playful, very much something out of like Avatar when they're flying on the flying creatures. Jake Sully and what's her name? The Na'vi.
Oh, you're talking about the James Cameron one. I thought you were talking about the Airbender.
Oh, no, I don't watch animes. Yeah, no. I was talking about James Cameron's masterpiece, the start of an incredible franchise. Avatar, the blue one.
The blue avatars. I don't remember where I've seen this scene before, but I think I've seen it done with like horses. Or like somebody like dared somebody to go do something on a horse, and then they did, and they like ran through the countryside, and it was adorable, but they did it with dragons.
No, I know what you mean. It's definitely a trope. I feel like I don't know what the term is on TV tropes, but I bet I can find it. You know, yeah, it's definitely a dare.
It's like it's always
right?
it's like a wild horse a lot, like the one horse that nobody can ride.
Oh well, that's definitely a trope. Yes.
Wild dragons couldn't fly me away.
Thanks, Mick.
You're welcome.
That was great.
That's one thing I can contribute to this discussion.
Yeah,
God,
great.
It's gonna kill me trying to remember what this is. I've definitely seen this before.
Okay, was it the movie Titanic?
Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh.
They're in the desert, and the guy is telling her,
yes.
"Oh, you want to get your comb?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get my comb." And he's riding away. And then are you actually being serious?
Yeah, that's it. That was the scenario.
Oh God, are you being serious right now?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was it.
Amazing.
How did you do that?
I don't know. Maybe Michael and I aren't drift compatible. Maybe it's you and me.
Just drift compatible. Crouching
or maybe
Tiger.
all three of us. You know, we are now. What was it? Crimson Typhoon.
Yes, that's right.
Crimson Typhoon is finally formed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the exact scene. Holy shit.
Wow.
I'm glad that we could do this together, everyone.
I'm blown away. That was amazing.
Make sure we keep this in.
Yeah.
Maybe like trim it down so it's not.
I'm not editing anything out.
I had been thinking about that scene for like the past few minutes. I was like, "There's no way that's what he's referring to. He must be thinking about something else." So I just like kept it to myself, and finally I was like, "It reminds me of this thing."
Wonderful. Yes.
That was a really good movie.
Everyone should go watch Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's still on Netflix.
Is it? Wait. Is it the original one?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I was just looking at it the other day.
Because Netflix made like a Netflix like sequel to it, and I was like,
God.
I mean, the Netflix sequel like fits all of the things that you want to fit, like cool action scenes, but it isn't the same drama as the first one, which maybe is how we all feel about the first few Game of Thrones seasons and the later ones. Who knows?
That's good stuff. No, they do have. Yes, I see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny with the Netflix original tag.
Yeah, that's not the one we're talking about.
They do have the original Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. They also have like the whole Ip Man series. I don't know if you guys have watched those. Those are great.
I've seen some of them. I saw one of the ones not from that series, but a different version of it in theaters. Also starring Zhang.
Yeah, highly recommended.
This was the second time this has happened. The other time was when I made that ridiculous noise and someone told me it was some South Park, and they were exactly right.
Can you replicate that noise again for new listeners? Perfect.
Nailed it.
Thank you. I'm going to edit that into the the theme song again. I'm going to take another crack at that.
This should be like a running segment where I describe something from a movie I vaguely remember, and then somebody has to answer what it is.
I think
that's right. Ripples in the Matscape.
Oh, yes.
Amazing. Great. Well, speaking of nice catches and connections, I guess, User BL1Y posted a question. The show did change the opening credits a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean they entirely changed them. Now it's focusing on the interior of Winterfell and King's Landing and all that, but there's also different symbols around the astrolabe in the credits. This user took some close-ups of them. The first, there's 3 images shown. The first is the wall coming down. The second is the red wedding. The third picture is a comet and 4 dragons. Now, their interpretation of this was that 1 dragon is standing upright while other 3 are flying. So the upright dragon is Dany, and the others are her dragons. Why do you? These are an interesting set of scenes to choose for the astrolabe, though. What do you guys think about these?
I'm not sure. Like, did they choose these for like particular significance? Like, are these going to come back this season? Because I know for this episode, they included Last Hearth, and they included the spiral of the White Walkers underneath it as sort of like a call forward to what was about to happen. Most people missed it, but is that kind of what they're doing here? Are they injecting more previews and plots? Like, is the Red Wedding going to come up again? Is the birth of the dragons going to come up again? Obviously, the wall falling. I'm not really sure.
I don't know if it's coming up again or not, but these scenes used to depict moments from Robert's Rebellion. So now they're showing stuff from the current story. I think it's interesting that when they showed Dany and the 3 dragons, what they're showing is not current day. Because of the Red Comet, what they're more or less pointing to is either season 2 / or A Clash of Kings, and very much the birth of them. So it's that beginning. I was wondering if there was like something tying it all together in terms of the dragons, but probably not because of the second image. I do kind of like this is an aside. I like the way that there's that figure on the side that is holding up. I am assuming that's the wolf's head. I'm not really sure what the head is, but it reminds me very much of Perseus holding the head of Medusa, but that's clearly not what that is, but vibes.
Yeah, actually, that's a good connection. People in the thread were talking a lot about the Red Wedding one. That's a flayed man holding up the wolf's head. That's the flayed man of House Bolton. At least that's how some people interpreted it. And that if you look very closely and squint, you can see a trout in the lion's mouth on the Red Wedding one as well. And then there's the headless wolf hung from the twins. So, this representational kind of thing, it is interesting. Like you mentioned, the original scenes were, I think, Robert's Rebellion, and then I feel like there was maybe one thing that wasn't Robert's Rebellion. I don't remember what it was. But it's interesting that these are now the story that we're in. Like, these are the legendary events that we are talking about, as opposed to the legendary events that came before. Do you guys think it was a good idea to change the title sequence? Like, how did you feel about that?
I thought it was a good idea. I mean, they had the budget for it. It looks really cool. And I mean, even as just like a super minor thing, it just creates more people doing what we're literally doing right now, just continuing conversation about a thing that didn't really cost them too much to do. So, looks cool.
I was super jazzed about it. It's something that feels very special for the last season. Chloe, aka Lizen Arbor, on Twitter discussed how it means, Robert's Rebellion was the beginning of like one story, and by changing the images on the astrolabe, it means that you are coming across the beginning of a new story, a new legend.
Yeah, I think that's a strong point. And these are they're big events for different reasons. I like that the Red Wedding is included too. Like, it's not just these kind of magical events, but really, like, if you were taking an AP Westerosi history course and you had to learn like the 5 bullet points about this time period, it would be like, okay, dragons were born, the wall was destroyed, this massive war crime happened at the Twins, maybe some other things, I don't know, some other stuff happened, I guess, in the past few seasons. It's not important though.
I mean, the showrunners had said right somewhere that they'd wanted to change it for a while. I mean, maybe it just goes down to what this user Wally 3791 says, at this point, they have no reason not to show symbolism carte blanche in these intros. Have fun with it, I say. And maybe that's all it is.
I was just kind of looking at them, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I wonder if you can almost interpret a perspective from these. Like, the ones from Robert's Rebellion were obviously from Robert's perspective, or from his side, kind of like in a historical kind of way. If you look at Dany's one, it depicts her as a massive dragon, which, I mean, like a big scary dragon, where, I don't know, I assume if it was written from someone who is favorable to Dany, they would have maybe made it look more majestic or made it look more like her. Although the rest of them are symbols. And the Red Wedding one really looks like something the Lannisters would do. Like they're triumphing over the evil direwolves.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the dragon, because you have, a parallel there with the dragon destroying the wall and then the dragon bringing dragons back. And
makes it look evil, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, obviously dragons are just a classic symbol of evil in everything. So that's something that's already baked into the story, but it's I don't know. It is an interesting use of the symbol there on the astrolabe.
I just assume also if Jon was on the Iron Throne at the end, he would not depict a red wedding kind of thing where it looks like the Tullys and the direwolves are just getting trounced by the mighty Freys, Boltons, and Lannisters.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be like a hieroglyphic kind of thing.
Right. What would that represent to the people? Yeah, that's an interesting question to think of it that way.
I don't know, just spitballing.
Spit on me.
Get you nice and wet.
Yeah. Thanks so much for
Like
that.
the Night King in Jon's arms in dragon class armor.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad we're keeping this cohesive thread through the whole thing. Now, it wouldn't be an episode of Maester Monthly if we didn't bring in a post by BaelBard. This is the #1 BaelBard tribute podcast on the internet. No, but BaelBard did post a long-ish post on the subreddit the day after the episode aired. And the title, which may be contentious, was "Moments That Should Be Huge and Game-Changing Don't Feel Like It." And this, for the record, we've been talking about some posts that may have slipped under the radar. This one received like 2,500 upvotes and silver and gold. And so a lot of people saw and talked about this. 1,000 comments on it. It's a long-ish post, so I'm not going to read it all out, but I'll read you the first and last bit. BaelBard says, the season 8 premiere has some scenes that we, readers and viewers, waited years to see. Jon becoming a dragon rider, his reunion with Arya, him learning his parentage, the start of the War for the Dawn, yet none of it really feels this grand and game-changing, does it? And then the post goes on and on. At the very end, BaelBard says, when you have an episode where Jon learns about his parentage, rides a dragon, and meets Arya, but the best scene is Sam learning about the death of his family, you are doing it wrong. And that's some spicy shrimp from BaelBard. That's a cocktail shrimp with a lot of spicy sauce on it.
In a ring around, in a ring of 8 shrimp, all in a spiral.
Yes.
On fire.
Yeah. Baked shrimp Alaska.
No, a flambe. Come on, man.
Oh yeah, wow, I'm really falling apart. So I don't know. This is a tricky topic. I think people have been back and forth on this since the episode aired. I'm curious to hear where you guys fall on this. How you feel about the big moments that we got in this episode. I tend to agree with this. I think. I mean, some of these moments, like Jon and Arya's reunion in particular, I think really just that didn't it didn't hit me as much as I thought it would. I was far more affected when Sansa and Jon hugged back in season 6 than by this emotional reunion between Jon and Arya. And I think that might have been to do with what they talked about. Like they just talked about their swords a little bit, and it didn't feel maybe that personal connection. I don't know. Yeah, it's true that those big moments aren't necessarily resonating. It's also true that there are a lot of big moments, and so when you have this many quote unquote big moments, it can be hard to make it feel make every single one of them feel huge when the whole episode is things that could feel huge.
I think I agree. I think part of it is like, I'm going to cite a post that you wrote, Michael, about the dialogue. I think some of the dialogue just doesn't evoke the emotions as well as it could. I think that some of the actors have done a really great job with what they've been given. Like, I think that Maisie Williams did a wonderful job conveying in a sort of like side eye to the audience who knows what she's been through, showing that hesitation she has when she answers to John that she's only used needle a few times. And I think that kind of shows to an extent that she's beginning to withhold things from her brother, but it doesn't show it in its entirety. And I think that it also comes back to this article that was written on Vox by a writer named Todd Vanderwerf about how Game of Thrones is more interested in payoffs than actual storytelling, and how Game of Thrones has actually lost a lot of the second acts in its storylines. And I think that this is a trend that has been starting actually since season 6, not so much even like season 5, like in season 6 is I think where it started really starting. And the big moments are lacking partially because they're short. There's just not enough setup for it to feel right. Like, actually, interestingly, a user in this thread had recommended that John should have hopped onto a dragonback during the end of the previous season, or during the Beyond the Wall episode, right? Then it would feel climactic, as opposed to in this moment where he did it. It's like there's just not enough build up for it to mean something, or it's just jumped into it and there's just not enough space for this news to sink in or breathe.
I'm gonna be the disagreeing one here, I guess. I didn't really agree with what BaelBard was saying. I think part of the problem is a lot of fan expectations, that when you look at these moments, the way they're being described, it's being baked into it that they think that these should be like end of the episode, end of the season, huge moments, each one of them. And they like kind of can't all be that. They can't all be the big grand sweeping moments where the music swells and something amazing happens. They have, even if they like did more episodes, they still have way too much to do. And on top of that, I'm not even sure that like how am I going to say this? I think there are some things that fans have built up way more in their head for how they think that should go versus how it actually ended up on the screen. Like, I'm not sure how people imagined how John would react to being told he's actually Aegon Targaryen, but the idea that it's being pushed by his best friend in order to get him to usurp Dany and take the throne himself, and how it's not just complicating him on a personal level, it's also complicating the defense and what's happening and how it's moving the plot forward instead of being sort of a kind of an end of a plot. I thought that was actually very good and interesting, and it really works with a lot of what George has written before about the kind of reluctant heirs who get pushed forward, much like Daemon Blackfyre or Aegon II, who did not want to take the throne from the people who had it, but the people around them made them. I don't know. I just think that for a lot of these, I thought expectations got in the way of what I thought were very good scenes overall.
Yeah, it's interesting that BaelBard in their post has a big problem with how the show treated the Rhaegar and Lyanna reveal, and the insisting that his real name is Aegon Targaryen, his real father is Rhaegar, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, to a certain extent, I agree, but also I do think it's interesting to have the characters doing that to Jon. I don't have as huge of a problem with that, because I think it's a flawed way for the characters to be approaching this, but that's okay. Like, to have flawed things like that. I don't know, though. I would agree with a lot of folks in the comments. There was one comment that was from a user, Bojangles1987, which was, I really can't believe they didn't put Dany's reaction to Viserion in this episode. And I think that's something that, even if people didn't maybe notice that consciously, it kind of did undercut some things. this really big moment happened at the end of season 7, and it feels like our characters should be reacting to that, and that should be affecting them, and Dany in particular as the mother of dragons. But we don't really get a lot of exploration of that, so there's something missing there, I think.
And I feel like there's a way that could have been incorporated in. Like, for example, there's some people have pointed out that sure, Daenerys could have reacted to it the moment that the news was presented. I think that actually Emilia Clarke did a good job of conveying those emotions while trying to hold her composure when meeting all of the Northmen for the first time. In that moment quite well, like that complexity. I think that it could have been brought up again right when Jon and Dany go to the dragons, and they're like, oh, they're not eating enough. And she could be like, they're not eating enough because they lost their third or something. And then talk about how it affects her because she also lost her third child, because she would tell Jon, these are the only family that I'll ever have. Sure, she said it previously at the end of season 7 that the dragons are the only children she will ever have, but she could reinforce that and talk about how she's lost everything. She's lost her brother, she's lost her lover, she's lost everyone she's ever loved, and that she almost had a child once. And then that creates a moment of intimacy between her and Jon, and he's like, oh, I have to support her and like be there for her, and like then next thing you know, there's something that's coming in between them, and like Dany's talking about how she needs to live up to this legacy of what House Targaryen is, because she's the last Targaryen. It's all on her, and she has to do that. And now Jon's like, oh, there's this. And maybe how you brought this up in your blog post, Michael, of how we don't get a reaction to Sansa telling Jon, did you back Dany because you believed in her or because you loved her? And we don't necessarily get any sort of reaction, I think, not entirely, to Jon learning that he is supposed to be heir to the throne. It's just like shock.
Yeah. That scene in particular, with Sansa and Jon did bug me a little bit, because so much of the time was spent on Jon, sort of just hooting and hollering about how, the titles don't matter and all that. And that's clearly a thread they're trying to set up for this season, that, Jon is going to be torn between like, these titles don't matter, but also like maybe they do kind of matter. But I don't like, we didn't need that discussion. We needed to get to know our characters a little better at the start of this season, and we just didn't get that as much. And it's interesting too with I keep going back to the dragon riding, with when Jon rides the dragon. One thing that I think is true in the world of The Song of Ice and Fire is that people who inhabit this world interpret it as it happens to them, right? Like you have people who see things and they immediately relate it to a story, or they turn it into a story. Sansa disappears from Joffrey's wedding, and immediately she poisoned him and she turned into a bat and flew away. She's this mythical character. So you would expect that if people saw Jon riding a dragon, that would immediately flip some really big switches for a lot of the characters. That when he hops off that dragon, the world should be different than when he hopped on that dragon. That everyone in Winterfell should be like, Jon, what? No one except Targaryens has ridden a dragon in centuries. Like, this is insane. But the world doesn't feel changed by that event. It's like a lighthearted character moment for Jon and Dany. And, Varys and his buddies are looking up and they're like, there he goes. Oh boy, what are we going to do about him? Yelling his head off on this dragon. It's just hard sometimes, I think, because significance isn't evenly spread out among these events. Some things are supposed to feel very significant and some things aren't. And they don't always match up with what we think is going to be significant and what isn't, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And they had a lot they had to do this episode just because of the fact that they were doing like 30 billion reunions for a lot of obviously this is the most popular like fiction show in the world, basically. So they're going to get a lot of people that don't remember the relationship between like Arya and Gendry, or they don't really remember how these characters relate to each other or where they left off last. So they had to devote quite a lot of time to at least very quickly reestablishing all these relationships so people remembered them. Because it not only is it the last season and there's a lot of people, but it's been a long layoff in between. People have gone and done other things with their lives. So they need to. I thought the scene with Arya at the beginning when she was watching the train coming in was pretty good at that, where they had Maisie very quickly establish her relationship to Jon, that she felt shame, that she was surprised, a little angry to see Sandor, and that she still has a crush on Gendry. And right away, even without saying anything, you could tell where she was going with this episode. And those kind of things I thought worked really well. And maybe, I don't know, I also didn't mind the Arya and Jon scene that much, I think, the way other people did, because I don't know. I'm not sure what people were expecting to happen, but they've changed so much. And Jon had a running theme throughout this episode where he was kind of trying to live in the past a lot with his relationships. He was trying to treat people the way he remembered them instead of the way they are now. And Arya reacted to that negatively in a way. I thought that was a good subtext to it, but it didn't have maybe like the swelling emotions that people wanted to feel when they saw them again, that they weren't the same two kids that left Winterfell that one time.
It's interesting what you were saying about these ideas that like the show is communicating things in these scenes that you almost don't need the dialogue for, right? Like with the Hound and Gendry and Jon, like establishing those relationships with Arya. Like she talks to the Hound, and the audience kind of knows what the Hound's gonna say. He's, oh, you're a cold bitch, aren't you? And then like, yeah, that's kind of thing the Hound would say. Okay, got it. They've met, they've interacted, we've reestablished that they know each other, and then Gendry and Arya talk, and he calls her his lady, and she like playfully doesn't like that, and we're like, okay, yep, got it. And it is true that this first episode does do a lot of table setting for like making sure we know exactly where these characters stand with one another. I don't know. I guess if there's a percentage of the audience who really felt that was important, or they're coming away having benefited from that, that's good. But like, I wish that the episode had more to say than just sort of reestablishing those relationships, like just setting stuff up. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's more to say at this point, and you can rely on the audience having seen the first 7 seasons of your show a little bit, kind of knowing where everyone's at. Someone did, not to keep the Harry Potter going, but someone in the comments on Bael's thread did say, I just felt like, regarding the dragon ride, I was watching Harry Potter ride the hippogriff for the first time in Prisoner of Azkaban.
That's hilarious.
Thank you, OG Durf.
Someone else, I think, I don't know where it was, said that it gave them like Quidditch vibes, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, actually. It's actually, yeah, because that's exactly how it goes. It's like Harry Potter jumps on a broom for the first time, and he's a
natural.
He's a little clumsy, and then he's a natural. Like, oh wow, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, Harry jumps on the broom for the first time because Draco is bullying Neville, and Harry wants to stop the bully. And Jon jumps on the dragon the first time because
he's like, why not? I want to impress this girl. Which, like, is totally, I guess, a reason, but it didn't feel that way. He was just like, all right, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of wonder if, like, it was that we wanted the show to take a firmer stance on his reunions with people.
Yes.
Like, we saw his reunion with Bran, and I think actually that one was fine. Mm-hmm. I think that one was fine, and that hit the note that it was supposed to, and it was consistent with the previous Bran reunions that we had seen, more or less. With Arya, it seemed like it didn't know whether to decide whether it was like touching things are the same way that they always have been, with the connection between the two, or that they're not, right? Because they kind of seem to hint that, like, oh, no, Arya's siding with Sansa now. And, like, of course she's not going to side super entirely. And we can see now that that connection between the two of them is broken. But it seemed like it didn't quite decide. And it almost seems like maybe what you want to do is build it more and more between, like, oh, he doesn't quite connect with Bran anymore. Oh, Sansa and he are at odds, and oh, now maybe he and Arya are at odds, and that culminates with the person who is not blood, but is his brother through the Night's Watch, Samwell Tarly, coming in and being like, well, Jon, I also don't like your new girlfriend.
Yeah.
And here's why. And you want it to be like beat after beat after beat of Jon being pushed away from the people that with whom he was close and being isolated with all that. And now he's like, what do I choose? What do I do? Because now that he's been isolated from all these people, obviously the person that he feels most emotionally close to at the moment is Daenerys, and that creates like an inner conflict between like what he's gonna do.
Yeah, no, yeah. I see what you mean. And like it's funny because if you really squint your eyes and like I don't know, look at this through a filter, you can kind of see that in the episode. What you're talking about. But
the seeds are there.
Yeah, but I don't think the dialogue backs it up. Like these characters aren't talking about things that are important. They're just making noises with their mouths while we kind of figure out like how they're positioned with one another. You know, I keep coming back to that scene with Sansa and Jon towards the end of the episode, where Jon is saying stuff that we've kind of heard before. And like we understand because he's yelling that he's frustrated with Sansa, and that Sansa is, you know, a little frustrated with him because he's spending all his time with his new flame. But we don't get to the heart of that until the very end of the scene when it ends, when she's like, oh, so did you do it for love or for duty? And then boom, it's over. We could have had an entire scene of just them talking about that and Jon talking about his feelings a little bit. You know, it doesn't have to be so deeply buried in the subtext, and I don't think it is intentionally buried in the subtext, but you can have it in the text a little bit. You can have it in the dialogue. These relationships, they don't have to just be talking about like high fantasy titles and stuff while we understand that what they're really talking about is this. They can really talk about things.
Yeah, and like it could be him and Sansa talking about it, but ultimately, I think that the question that Daenerys should have been asking that could be heightened in Jon's experiences is maybe before he like has this conversation with Sansa, or he goes and he sees her like standing over the yard as she does, because that's the dramatic thing that they have her do, stand over the yard. Like he's walking through the yard, and it seems like the other Northerners are giving him the wary glances that they were giving the other people in the procession of like, wow, you like just really sold us out, huh, dude? And then he goes to talk to Sansa about it, like, oh, so they all really think I sold them out. And she's like, yeah, dog, did you like really sell us out? And he's like, I don't know. And then when he talks to Daenerys, like, Daenerys, the question she should be asking him, and I think this is another issue that people are having, like, you'll see that people are throwing criticisms. We didn't cite any of these posts of the interactions between Daenerys and Sansa, and I don't think that that's necessarily out of character. I'm going to say that. Like, I think that people are tired of this, like, sort of mean girl / cattiness plotline when we had it already in season 7. It feels like a rehash, and we're retreading old ground. And I think that the question Daenerys should have been asking Jon was not, and that could have made this feel more organic, is not, your sister doesn't like me. She should have been like, your people don't like me. The North, the people whom I am defending and leading, do not trust me or want me as a leader. And I think that would have had a little more weight, and if we had discussed that more along with, again, family and her destiny of, or what she feels as her destiny of being a Targaryen as the last one.
Yeah. 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 I would agree with that. The whole kind of like mean girl plot line or whatever that you were talking about there, that's something they've done with Osha and Mira on the show. I think that was really the first big example of it. And then it has come up since, obviously. And, to a certain extent, I think it's true to the characters that Sansa and Dany might not necessarily get along right away. It would be nice if they did, but I mean, I think they are very different people, even just from a purely character standpoint, and are positioned, with different priorities and different connections to Jon. So the problem isn't that they don't get along. It's just that the focus seems to be entirely on just that kind of like high school relationship, and less on Sansa as a stand-in for the North, or as the North itself. Yeah.
And this is a point that is brought up in this great long discussion by user Lonalon5, and they call the post is entitled D&D's Writing of Women, and how the women seem to be really positioned against one another. They always just have jealousy or distrust between them. And within that post, we have a comment by user vidrageon that says, "It saddens me that in the opening episode of season 8, every major female character was smirking. Arya smirks when we first see her. Dany smirks when her dragon flies overhead and scares the shit out of the small folk. Sansa smirks when Jon is talking to Bran, and Cersei smirks when she hears of the wall falling. It's exactly as you said, the idea that strong female characters are snarky and badass, and the visual representation of that superiority or perceived superiority is through smirking." And then they have this last line of, "It really irks me. Smirking irks," which I just thought that was funny in terms of sounds.
Smirking irks. Yeah, this was a good comment. And it does speak, I think, to some of how the show uses like the same kind of behaviors or same kind of dialogue ticks or whatever as a shorthand for how we're supposed to think about characters. I mean, you think back to like Olenna Tyrell, and that was pretty much her whole character was like a good smirk. And that's not to denigrate that necessarily, just that when you have every single major female character hitting the same note, it feels very samey, especially contrasted with Tyrion and his kind of insecurity, but he's trying his best, and then Jon, who is stubbornly pushing through. You can describe the male characters in very different terms. With the female characters, it's generally less differentiated, I guess.
No, you make a really good point. They really don't give them the same kind of depth. I think I remember there's the particularly good one with Missandei when she smirked as Dany turned the tables on the slave masters, I think, in Marine. They do have the other male characters hit similar notes over and over again. They even made fun of it. They made fun of Jon and his constant brooding stare. And they're definitely sort of flat characters, but they're usually flat in their own ways, or they always hit the same character note, but they're differentiated from each other, I would say.
Right, sure. Like you can rely on Tyrion to make a eunuch joke, but not everyone is making eunuch jokes.
Yeah. Not everyone's making fun of Varys for not having balls, but Tyrion's consistently doing that. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Lyanna Mormont comes up in the comments here too. There's a user who commented here, user Cantus, who we like very much. Who said Cantus?
Cantus. Oh, sorry. No, we know Cantus. We love Cantus.
Yes, we love Cantus. Who said, "What really bothers me is that the show's characterization of Lyanna Mormont is a clear piece of evidence that D&D had no idea of what was going on in the North and went for the most topical details," which is a very spicy take. But it is interesting. This idea that someone else, 14th Century Hood, pointed out earlier in the thread, that Lyanna Mormont, that they believe a lot of people act like Lyanna Mormont is a fresh new concept and love her character, when they ask, how is she any different from Arya? Seriously. Which I think is a fair question. You have both Arya and Lyanna For some reason, denigrating knitting. They're really against knitting, and other women who knit, which, knitting is very useful, for the record. Knitting is good. It's a net positive,
Yeah,
but is coded female. So
yeah, as user Basemaster, who's one of the mods on the subreddit, pointed out in our Maester Monthly episode, Women of Westeros, like knitting and sewing is absolutely necessary, especially in times like this, because guess what's gonna fucking keep you warm during the long winter, everyone? The clothes that are made by knitting.
I thought you were going to say cave sex. Sorry, my bad.
Oh yes, to keep your queen warm.
Make sure you take her to a cave. I was racking my brain while you guys were talking, trying to think of a female character that doesn't smirk all the time, and I think maybe the only one's Yara. Maybe
she kind of smirks too, though.
A little bit, but they let her. I think they let her have a much broader range of emotions than maybe some of the other characters. Or maybe I'm just remembering that because she went from playful at the beginning when she showed up, when she was messing with Theon, and then just became sort of grim, maybe a Lyanna Mormont Arya type after that.
Yeah, I can see it either way with her, I guess. She's an interesting beast on the show, because she's definitely different from her book character by a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going back to like season, I guess it was season 7 when she and Ilaria Sand they were about to have some, nasty personal business. And she was like kicking Theon out of the room, but like giving him a smirk as she did so. I don't know. Yeah. Yara's an interesting one. It's too bad. It's really too bad that Yara has never interacted with any major character besides Theon or Euron or Baelon. Except Ilaria, I guess.
Ramsay too.
Ramsay, but she's not one of the people who tends to show up at like war councils and stuff. Was she? I'm saying that she was. She totally went to Marine. I forgot all about that arc where they sailed to Marine.
But then they had her again just sort of hit on Dany. The same note with Ilaria.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, that's a problematic trope in and of itself. Would you say that Brienne smirks as sort of our final female character here? Brienne, a smirker? Yes, no?
I thought we were mostly talking about this episode, so I'm not sure we didn't see Brienne this episode.
True.
Oh, she was in the background. She didn't say anything.
True, but she was smirking the whole time.
Right.
You could tell.
Well, I don't know. I mean, she's Captain Phasma now. She can do whatever the fuck she wants.
That's a great point.
Just shows up with that ridiculous dress that she had at the premiere and just looks like an angel all over the place, and everyone's wowed at her.
Okay, but would that be, right place, right time? We could make it work within the context of magic.
That's true. I think she's more she glowers.
She does glower.
True.
Yep, definitely a glowerer. Yeah. Great call.
I think she's too unhappy a character to smirk, maybe. Like personally.
She can't even bring it to smirk.
I don't know if I think of it as unhappy so much as just doesn't know how to react sometimes. And
maybe like world weary?
Resting bitch face, but I don't even see it as that for her. But yeah.
Resting Brienne face.
Mm-hmm. I think that like the happiest moment that she's had, and maybe the last one, was when she got Oathkeeper. And I think it's been like super downhill since then. Right?
She did meet. Oh wow! She did meet with Jaime again in season 6, I think.
She wasn't super happy about it though, right?
No, it wasn't like a oh boy moment. Yeah,
she had a nice, happy moment. I think when she sparred with Arya, I think that was a really joyous moment for both those characters, and I thought that was a really great interaction between the two of them to find someone who is like them. Yeah,
good call. Last night I had a dream that Sandor and Brienne were forced to have a trial by combat, and Arya was there in Targaryen armor watching while Dany presided over it. So just in case that comes true, I'm just putting it out there in the universe now so that I can claim dibs on that when it happens. Just FYI.
I think that's all you, bro.
just my dream world where I dream about Brienne.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamie's had them too, so this is normal
Wait.
apparently.
Is Michael
That's right.
Jamie?
Whoa.
I would not consider myself a handyman, so that's strike one.
Have you shoved
Wow.
children out of windows?
Wow.
Wow.
I'm gonna take my answer off the air if that's okay.
He's holding up the number 10. This
Let's
is
talk about
incredible.
this. Did you guys see that? There was that kid who just tried to climb in my window. But I pushed
That was
him.
weird. It was Tommen. How did that happen?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a lot of kids falling out of windows in this show.
Yeah,
Like two kids, I guess.
People like get locks on your windows in Westeros, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the main. If people take one thing away from this episode of Quill and Tankard, lock your windows.
Wait, isn't this a song? The
Also-
the intruder song? People climbing in your windows.
Oh yeah. Hide
Oh,
your wives, hide your kids, because they, what was it?
snatching. What?
Raping. what was
Yeah, I
it?
think it
don't
was
know.
Yeah.
It was the R word.
Hide yo kids. Yeah.
Hide your wife because Jamie
Ow.
coming in.
Yes, that was it. Hide your kids, hide your wives.
Yep. That was probably like 10 years ago.
It wasn't 10 years ago. It was definitely the like 2010, 2011. Wow, shit. Maybe that is almost 10
It is
years
almost
ago.
10 years ago.
That's almost 10 years ago.
Hashtag math.
God.
That's only on my
damn
mind
it.
because I've been binging that YouTube channel. Those guys are still going.
Amazing.
Shmo-Yoho or something like that. I don't know. It's awesome. They had a great song about Mark Zuckerberg and how he wants to smoke meats. It was incredible.
Awesome.
Dude, I want to smoke
Dude.
meats. Like, I just like don't have all of the things that I need to do so. I also
Go
wanna,
buy
like,
Zucks.
Yeah, I
Smoke?
mean, like my coworker has like a smoker, and like I want to get one, and also like a thing that I can use to cure meat. Thank you everyone for listening to all of my culinary hopes and dreams. But
Smoke meat every day.
Got that link in there for you. So you can
Thank
like
you.
get a preview of what it's going to be like to go over Zucks and smoke some meat.
Ass waffles, sound off in the comments if you like to smoke meat. Just like Azora High.
Oh,
Look at that,
wow.
bringing it full circle. Bringing
Wait.
it full circle.
So Aries
Wow.
Targaryen, he wanted to smoke meat in King's Landing.
That's right. He wanted to smoke meat every day.
So he really just wanted a big barbecue, and Jamie overreacted.
Yeah. Let him be king over charred bones or whatever, right? He was talking about the ribs. He was talking about those succulent ribs.
Oh my god, it makes sense. He was talking about well done ribs, and Jamie likes medium ribs.
That's right. Yeah.
It all connects now.
It's the dumbest thing we've ever said. Or at least it's up there. I don't know. Maybe that's a bold statement. Comment, ass waffles, sound off in the comments with the dumbest things we've ever said.
I'm going to be, I think, at the top of that list.
I'm giving people lots of responsibility in the comments this time. I think that probably wraps it up for this evening at the Quill and Tankard with your hosts of the Maester Monthly podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this. If you want to be in on the discussion next week, come to the subreddit Song of Ice and Fire, post your thoughts, join the discussion and the conversation. As you can tell, we are sitting here reading thousands of comments. We will probably see yours, and if we love it, then we will tattoo it on our biceps. So that's a promise. That is a solemn vow before a weirwood tree. Before we take our leave, you can of course find us on Twitter and Facebook at Maester Monthly, where you probably should, according to Brand's visions, it's inevitable that you will smash the like button. You can find us on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, and Acast, I believe. Of course, you can also find us on YouTube. We will be doing these once a week during the show season, and then we will return to our normally scheduled in heavy air quotes content when the show ends.
And as Michael said, we are keeping track of these. You don't gotta be popular for us to notice you, as you can tell by what we've chosen. You just gotta be interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, we're watching you with 1,000 eyes and one.
Maybe just one.
Just my eyes are half closed, so it only counts as one. I have been Michael, also known as Bookshelfstud.
And I have been Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I have been Matt, also known as JoeMagician.
Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone on the subreddit for creating such great content, and we will see you next week.